guys, Geared Brian. Today we're going to show you a couple tips when it comes to working on brakes on your car. Now, the number one thing, aside from just having tools, you want to use some sort of penetrating oil, especially if you live in a rust belt. You want to knock out all the things that you're going to be touching. Now, for example, you're going to want to lubricate the back bolts over here for the brake caliper, the guide pin bolts over here, and then especially the bleeder screw right here. You always want to make sure these release, or else you're going to have a very bad day. You might need to end up actually getting a whole caliper just because of this thing breaking and you can't extract it. So like I had a little bit before the job, if you can, apply some penetrating oil so that can soak in. You're going to want some tools that are going to make your job a lot easier. In this case, typically everyone has a free ratchet where you go ahead and try to break things loose. Maybe if you need more power, you'll get a pipe over it. Maybe you'll use a wrench on the end and try to get more leverage on this thing. Now, you can kind of avoid that altogether if you just get a ratchet with a lot more leverage. You could also get a breaker bar that has, quite a lot more leverage as well. In this case, I'm just using a longer 3/8 ratchet, and this will break down the time constantly and quickly. So we'll go ahead and remove these, and then I'll show you the next tip. I'm all about showing you guys new tricks and tips about how to do things faster, but sometimes just having the right tool makes the job a lot quicker. When it comes to brakes, you always want to make sure you put this in a secure location. You don't want it to just fall out, because when it extends over too much, you'll actually end up messing up the brake hose. So now that we put that down good, we're going to pry these. Now, when you're working on a car that's really rusted, you don't want to just go ahead and impact the crap out of these bolts. What will end up happening is you'll snap them clean off. You want to go with a manual ratchet, kind of feel it out. If it's getting really tight, if it's not, whatever. If it's starting to get looser and you feel it's good, then go ahead with an impact and impact it out if you have the access. If not, you want to get some penetrating oil, add it to it while you're doing this, and then remove it, because the worst thing in the world is doing a brake job and you snap the bolt. And there we go. All right, you guys, so now that you got that bracket off, you could just go ahead and slide these things out. Now, a lot of the times it will not come out this easy, especially if you live in a very rusty area. Like me, this is a very lucky situation. On the other side, it's a different story though. So if your rotor actually ends up sticking instead of removing this easily, what generally happens is these parking brakes are extended too much and they're catching on the inner part of this rotor. So what you want to do is at the very side right here, this is a star adjuster. If you adjust it to the left or to the right, it adjusts how much this is expanded and how much this is closed. So as you turn it to a certain direction to close it, it'll get off of this thing, and then you could pull this rotor right out. Sometimes even when you de-adjust these and you loosen the tension, what will happen is these still sit to this part of the hub, so you'll actually have to get a hefty hammer or something to knock these loose, but you do not want to put too much stress on this bearing because you'll ruin the bearing. Alright guys, so now that we're on the other side, this rotor does not want to remove. So if you have a rotor that doesn't want to remove, do not go ahead and get a big sledgehammer or 4-pound hammer and try to beat the crap out of this. Not only will you stress out the bearing, but you most likely still won't get this thing out. What's happening here is the parking brake is stuck. It's expanded too much, and now it's holding this rotor in place. Once we de-adjust it, we can hit it if we need to. So as you can see right here, at the very top, what we're going to do is get this out. As you can see, we got it out. And now that we got that rubber grommet off, all we're going to do is look into here. And then we're going to try to turn the rotor until we could see the star adjuster, which is the parking brake adjuster. As you can see right there, that is the star adjuster right there. So all I'm going to do is slowly de-adjust it with this flathead. And right now I'm just going to the left. And now that we de-adjusted it, if it's still holding, now we can get the hammer. And we'll just go ahead and... And there we go. And as you can see, this is pretty much what we were de-adjusting. This allows it to contract and expand more to that backside of the rotor. Now, another thing to note is you always want to make sure you check this dust shield, because sometimes what happens is you hear a screeching noise, you think your brakes are bad, and they probably are, but what happens is this actual dust shield rots out so bad that it hits the rotor. So you always want to inspect it, either bend it out or get it out or replace it or whatever it may be, but you always want to make sure that this is not actually hitting the actual rotor. Also, a little bonus tip before I go, so when you guys are doing the brakes and bleeding it, always crack these open with an actual socket and ratchet, because it's a 6-point socket. It'll make sure it gets off without rounding off. Don't try to break it loose with a wrench. It might be under tight and you might end up stripping it. So break it loose first with a socket, and then you could go back and forth with a wrench, bleeding it. Also, don't forget to use heat or penetrating oil if it really feels like it's about to snap. And now we can just blow this out, and I'll wait for the parts to come in. Subscribe for more tips, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. I hope this helped.